Good news or not, unemployment drops to 3.4%, yet conditions are still worsening. I am Renaldo McKenzie, and this is another episode of the Neoliberal podcast. We are in video and audio. This is a remake of the video or the podcast we did yesterday. But because of lighting and audio issues, we decided to go at it again. But this is an important story that we have to ensure that it is clear and that you get the picture. So there is the news out that unemployment drops to 3.4%. So of course we had to react. Good news or not? Yet conditionings are still worsening. Nevertheless, many in the tech, media and retail and food industries are laying off thousands of workers, from Microsoft to Wawa, Facebook, Twitter, just to name a few. Income inequality is at its highest. More people are poor or falling into abject poverty. Education outcomes are still and falling. Inflation has decreased, yet prices are high on many consumer goods. The Feds just raised the interest rates, promising more to come. What positives are there in this news, given the other social conditions and poor economic outlook? Is it good news for some, but bad news for the rest? Since the national does not take into account the devil in the details, or the situation on the ground or in the locals. This report gets lost in the details of people's lives who are struggling to find well-paying jobs and a December economy that usually attracts more employment in retail and other industries, given the usual increases in consumer spending during the Christmas holidays. So the employment was expected to rise. However, what will happen in February or March? Signs suggest that the economy is bracing for more blows given the interest rate hikes to come and the instability in inflation and rise in some consumer goods. Places with high poverty and unemployment rates, such as Philadelphia, has experienced increases in poverty, homelessness among the young, and more people are receiving welfare where they can. If not, the situation becomes an issue of rising crime and violence, and we refer to that as relative deprivation. Now, according to the BLS, the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, payroll employment rises by 517,000 in January. Unemployment rate changes little at 3.4%. Total non-farm payroll employment rose by 17,000 in January, and the unemployment rate changed little at 3.4%. Job growth was widespread, led by gains in leisure and hospitality, professional and business services, and healthcare. Now, they released several. There were several press releases by the Bureau of Labor and Statistics (BLS), and you can visit them at www.thebls.gov. On February 2, 2023, they released a report citing that productivity increases to 3.0% in quarter 4 of 2024, and that unit labor costs increased 1.1% annual rates. On February 1, 2023, they released a report saying that the number of job openings increased in December. Hires and total separations changed little. And then February 1, they released a report saying that December jobless rates down over the year in 244 of 389 metro areas. Payroll jobs up 81. And as of January 31, 2023, compensation costs up 1.0% as of September 22 to December 2022, and up 5.1% over the year ending December 2022. Now, you can visit again the BLS by going to BLS.gov. Now, as I alluded to earlier, there are disparities in the unemployment figures that we don't take into consideration. And of course, and I believe that if you listen to the previous report, Rethinking Critical Economics 101, where I allude to the issue of the Fed raising interest rates And the rise in interest rates was an incremental. It was 0.25, and I had suggested that this 0.25, this incremental increase, is also to minimize any blows as they seek to mop up liquidity, because to raise the interest rates is a move to mop up liquidity. Take money out of, to transfer money from the hands of people in the economy. But it always affects the people who don't have money, because you have people who have money and people who don't have money. The people who have money are going to benefit from increase in interest rates in effect, because they're going to park that money somewhere and they're going to gain interest rates. People who borrow money, people who don't have money, who have to borrow money, of course, an increase in interest rates means an increase in costs. The cost of borrowing money, to invest at mama and papa shop, is going to affect small businesses and so on and so forth. But outside of that, the unemployment in terms of disparities, the figures, when we look at this unemployment which drops to 3.4%, I am saying to you that there are disparities in the take into consideration. The national versus rates for cities and black and brown communities. And of course, the BLS alludes to the metro areas just in their report. Now, a recent news article on St. Louis that I did shows that even if unemployment rates are at one level in some areas of the US, those vulnerable peoples in some black and brown neighborhoods such as St. Louis, Philadelphia, etc., experience higher rates of unemployment than the national average, which have correlated with high crime and violence. Question. And in the article I asked this question that I did on October 27, 2022. Does St. Louis and other major US cities suffer from relative inequality? Data suggests that St. Louis is among the cities with the highest murders and crime rates. The data also suggests that St. Louis is among the cities with the highest inequalities and disparities. In the article I wrote today, US national data shows that crime has spiked and that much of it is occurring within certain cities and communities. The cities that have experienced rapid increases in violent crimes with a weapon and robberies are among the poorest, with higher levels of people of color, including St. Louis, Missouri, where CVPA is located, and I was referring to the shooting at this CVPA high school where an African American young man shot two people, a teacher and a student. And we were talking about this rise in violence. St. Louis overtook Detroit as the most violent cities in the US with the highest murder rates. While at the same time, St. Louis is among the cities with the highest inequality or disparities, with a Gini coefficient of between 0.9 and 1.2, suggesting significant inequality between the richest and poorest households in terms of wealth and income. And if you read my book, Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income Inequality, Poverty and Resistance, I talk at length the Gini coefficient and Lorenz curve. Gini coefficient studies income inequality in society. Gini coefficient studies income inequality in society. And of course, and I'm saying here that communities that are dense with a dynamic mix of black and brown people, if you study the dynamics, if you study the society, you find that income inequality is usually higher than those communities where you have it's more monolithic society, or not much, where there's not much dynamism in the society. If you go to the Scandinavian countries, some European countries, you find that the Gini coefficient is much lower than the Gini coefficient here. But when I studied the Gini coefficient in the US and compared it with the global south, it was about in the 0.45, okay. But today it's above 0.7, means that especially since 2016 and 2018, and 2020, the Gini coefficient has significantly increased, correlating with what economists are saying and the report is saying and what's going on in St. Louis and many cities across the US and the world. Of course, you can refer to the story that I wrote looking at the St. Louis and US cities, and some US cities with high crime rates. Do they suffer from relative deprivation? Do they suffer from relative deprivation? And when we talk about relative deprivation, Relative deprivation suggests, which is a Marxist materialist theory, suggests that there's a correlation between societies with high income inequality and poverty and high crime rate. Okay. Now, in fact, the Federal Reserve Bank data reports that from 2014 to 2020, there's been a steady gain in wealth among white Americans. But people of color have little to no change since the 1990s. Further, between 2020 to 2022, not only has white Americans' net worth increased, but it has skyrocketed, spiking upward drastically, which explains the almost vertical blue slope in the figure below. And I'm referring to an article I did. This spike occurred during COVID, yet maintained incomes. This spike occurred during COVID, yet median incomes are falling and poverty rising, and this seems to be correlated to the spike in violent crime with a weapon. In addition, unemployment in St. Louis area and city are higher than the national average, and you can refer to the article. Now, so this is very important as we think about, as we situate this particular drop or in unemployment, while at the same time we are hearing the feds are seeking to increase interest rates, and in retrospect, I did an article which I probably will share with you concerning this the feds and the recent increase, and I'm going to share that. The previous report I did never had that, but I want to share that article with you real quickly. If I could bring it up, I'm trying to bring it up here. Here we go. I did an article, Rethinking Critical Economics 101, the Federal Reserve raising interest rates yet again. So on the heels of this job report, which many Democrats are celebrating and hailing, and I think I may have alluded to it, which I may have missed. I said, there are man-made fixtures all around us. This is well known. But why is it an important question? This question. Why is it an important question? It is important because of the facade of truth that becomes cemented in mind, thereby forgetting the human nature that comes with these fixtures, steeped in privilege, selfishness, and greed, leading to positions that take advantage of other people's. Therefore, we must not take for granted an existence created within our reality, bent in the ways of the creators, or else you will be left behind to hold the stick, you and your children and grandchildren. Hence, critical thinking is necessary as it thinks about thinking in relation to thought and rethinks the thought that was central to thinking, that has positioned our thoughts and realities. What is critical thinking? In its simplistic and basic definition, it is thinking about thinking and what was previously or is the current thought of that builds on or debunk information that leads to new discoveries of thought and positions that improve. It is deliberately and intentional, reflecting on truths, challenging oneself, whether through introspective discourse or engagement with others. It deconstructs reality by scrutinizing current knowledge and truths we have about ourselves. Critical thinking is usually within the realm of the post-colonial, postmodern skeptics, or those who are fighting for better, leading to effective change and progress. This brings us to critical economics, which, when placed within what we have said about critical thinking, is then thinking and rethinking ideas and principles about economics that has come to shape how we allocate or distribute resources within society. It means looking at the inequity and distributional challenges in society today from an economic that aims to allocate resources fairly and efficiently. However, a free market system has not achieved that. What economics was developed or supposed to do? It was supposed to distribute evenly within a perfectly competitive market. It is full of nepotism, though, driven by neo-capitalistic forms of economics within a capitalist society such as the US, where buyers and sellers transact business and set prices. However, the Feds have raised interest rates a third time in the last few months, which directly affects prices as it affects costs of financial institutions, of financial instruments. the cost is passed on to the consumers. Now, there's a story in Yahoo News regarding the standoff on interest rates hike by the Feds. The story is entitled Federal Reserve and the Market in Standoff on Rate Hikes. According to the story, sooner or later, either Wall Street or the Federal Reserve has to blink. Nearly a year into the Fed's drive to squash inflation by hiking interest rates at a blistering pace, investors still don't seem to fully believe what the Fed warned is coming next: higher rates through the end of the year, which could sharply raise unemployment and slow growth. Fed speakers last week underscored a contrasting message. They expect to raise their benchmark rate above 5%, modestly above Wall Street's forecast. Doing so would likely lead to even higher borrowing rates for consumers and businesses, from mortgages to auto loans to corporate credit. What's more, some Fed officials reiterated they plan to peg rates at a higher level through the end of this year. That's according to Christopher Rogomer and Stan Chow Chu in an article written in Yahoo, January 24, 2023, submitted 11:14 a.m. And this particular article is available in Yahoo News, I believe. And now I have responded by saying further increases in interest rates affects behaviors in the market. People usually spend less and park their money in investments. People usually spend less and park their money in investments. That's important here. In investment schemes or high yield savings account. If they know they're going to get higher interest rates, borrowers will have to pay more on their loans, and therefore less people may want to access loans. This drives down demand, especially when demand is outside supply, given the amount of money in the economy and the limited supply. However, those without money or limited funds will bear the brunt of the cost stemming from the increase in interest rates. Raising interest rates must be understood in terms of who benefits: lenders, bankers, the rich, those with money and who can afford to lend and garner greater returns from a slowing economy, and those who can afford to park millions in investments and high-yield savings accounts. The rest will see a freeze in salaries and wages, increase in mortgages and loans, some consumer goods given the increase in production and labor costs coming from high interests on business loans. The cost is passed to the working class so as to keep them working class and to ensure supernormal profits for the rich. The Feds, comprised of wealthy investors, financiers, old money, and politicians who control monetary policies, have come to supply a doctrine enshrined into psyche and academia without challenge. If the Feds increase rates to mop up liquidity, it means then that they are increasing the cost of living on the working class so that they can retreat to the usual working paycheck to paycheck. Because the thinking is that there's too much money in the economy. But who really has money in the economy? The wealthy or the poor working class, who will now suffer the wrath of the Fed's increased rate hikes. The Feds are interventionists, much like the technocrats leading the structural adjustment projects that had made the Caribbean into debt-burdened havens and dependent capitalist states. The IMF, World Bank, IDB all represented a bureaucratic machinery that controlled the monetary system in the global South countries, where they had lent monies at interest rates that affected the economies of the Caribbean. These structuralist banks of the Washington Consensus. And you can see the concept of Washington Consensus in my book, Neoliberalism, Globalization, Inequality, Poverty, and Resistance, published in 2021. These structuralist banks of the Washington Consensus, much like the Federal Reserve, represented wealthy groups, nations that helped to influence the terms of conditions of the monies loaned to the Caribbean. The newly independent countries spent much of their time making interest payments, while their peoples lacked the resources needed to improve their lives to compete in the global economy. The World Bank and technocrats of the Washington Consensus have apologized, recognizing their strategy of implementing structural adjustment too rapidly and inhumanely. Today, the World Bank has a limited role in how it lends funds to poor countries and has forgiven some of the debt with conditions. Still, however, let me read that. Today, the World Bank has a limited role in how it lends funds to poor countries and has forgiven some of the debt with conditions still. However, the interest rate hikes in post-industrial countries are pressuring international banks to lend at higher rates as well, which also stems from the demands of its funders and financiers. As such, the Caribbean might be faced with a similar situation, which had started in the 1970s, where OPEC caused many Caribbean countries to seek loans that they were unable to pay back. The Feds represent a bureaucratic machine, much like the IMF and the World Bank, run by technocrats who represent governments and wealthy bankers and financiers. The technocrats employ the interests of their members and funders. The Feds may have similar interests, yet it has protections in our laws, giving it other responsibilities to print and regulate money and maintain the value of the currency. Yet, there are those who have called for the abolition of the Federal Reserve for something better. The Fed itself was created as something better. I discussed the Federal Reserve when I had the interview with Mr. John Anthony Castro, the 2024 U.S. presidential candidate, some time ago. I think it was last year, my first time when I had him on the show, some time ago, in May of 2022, on the Neoliberal podcast. He explored the idea behind it and plans he has for it if he were to become president. And you can see the video interview with John Anthony Castro, U.S. 2024 presidential candidate, speaking about his company, his life, and challenge of Trump candidacy in May. His candidacy, and this was his first time on the program, and he has been a regular guest and contributor. We appreciate his contributions. Therefore, the post-colonial man must be a critical thinker who is a skeptic, one who is suspicious of history and its creation of it. For like Kant, we live in the reality of anticipation that is a result of human nature and circumstances. Kant's critique of pure reason and practical knowledge, including Newtonian physics being the foundation of knowledge about everything unchanging and categories of mind, he challenged as dangerous any study of moral codes as foundation to any knowledge outside of the mind. He challenged as dangerous any study of moral codes as foundation to any knowledge outside of the varieties of human natures. Social institutions or institutions represent traditions of knowledge steeped in hegemony and privilege. We will continue this inquiry in my upcoming book, Neoliberal Globalization Reconsidered. It is Neoliberal Globalization Reconsidered because of the neo-capitalistic nature of globalization today. Neo-capitalism is the system behind neoliberalism. We will also discuss this in Caribbean Thought Lecture Series at the Jamaica Theological Seminary, and continue in my studies at Georgetown University, and probably beyond that if I get into University of Pennsylvania. And many of you know I did apply for a transfer from Georgetown to Penn because I'm paying off the pocket to go to Georgetown, and it's costing me a lot more. So I have decided to transfer to the School of Edinburgh to complete my PhD, especially with the fact that I'm going. I do content, digital marketing. I'm a digital creator, and I express my writing and my ideas and my philosophies and my lectures and so on through now communication. And we are all about that here at the Neoliberal Round and the Neoliberal Corporation. As I said, we are all about serving the world today to solve tomorrow's challenges through our communication, which is to make popular what was the monopoly. Okay, and part of this is critical thinking. Critical thinking is very important to understanding and navigating life as we think about opportunities for the future. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Neoliberal Podcast. And please, coming up next, we will do a summary of my 3.5-hour lecture, which is available here either on the podcast and on the YouTube channel. But I did a summary and an introduction to that. That's coming up next on the Neoliberal on our YouTube channels and feeds. Okay, but you can still visit the channel right now and you get the previous videos that we did, and you'll get some of the 3.5-hour lectures where the students will just engage in the class. The summary lecture will not be available. The summary won't have the engagement of the students, but it will probably lift up some new ideas that can reflect on the class which we will talk about the summary coming up in the next video, and also coming up in the and then later on this week, Friday, we will in 3-hour class, we will wrap up my lecture and we will begin watching it live and dead. On Thursday, we're going to have Brian Container on the show. He is the executive director of the International Justice and Haitian Development. I'm looking forward to that. This is the Neoliberal. Send us a message. Send us a feedback. Visit us at anchor.fm/neoliberal. And we're also on YouTube. You can visit our website at theneoliberal.com or Renaldo. Subscribe to us. Share this show with your friends. Let us know how we're doing. And please get a copy of my book and stay tuned. And I actually wrote an article, and it's in the magazine. You need to hear this. And I have several articles that will be published soon. May you have a great day, and may we all work together to make this place a better place. And if we say we live in a competitive world that is based on fair game, let us promote that. But still, even losers are taking